Hi, everybody. This is Ray. I'm here at React Miami with Una Kravets. Una, thanks for sitting and having a chat with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, who you work for, and what you do?
So my name is Una. I work on the Google Chrome team as a developer relations engineer, and we focus on the web platform. So my team specifically focuses on anything that is interface related, so UI, CSS work, and DevTools. So making sure that you have the tools that you need to debug and build the platform.
That's really awesome. And speaking as like an advocate and working in developer relations, that sounds like one of the coolest things to advocate for, really.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to do dev advocacy anywhere else. This is really, it's the dream to get to work on the platform that you've spent so many years building on.
And that developer has spent so much time using.
So we're trying to make it easier for developers to build for the web. And that's ultimately the goal. Now there's so much fragmentation, there's so many frameworks, there's so many different ways to build a website, and it shouldn't have to be that complicated. So a lot of what we are trying to do is add these primitives and features that make it easier for developers to just build the things that they're trying to build without having to have all these dependencies and extras.
That's really awesome. So React Miami, is this your first time talking at React Miami, or you've been here before?
This is my first time at React Miami. I haven't done a lot of React-focused conferences, but I'm actually super excited to talk to this audience because I think that when I talk to people who are already following CSS and the UI community, they know about this stuff. But I think React developers aren't necessarily looking out for new things in the CSS space, even though it will help their lives. It'll make their lives easier. It'll help them do their jobs. It'll help them build interfaces and front ends.
Yeah.
I think that this is a great audience to highlight a lot of the work that's been changing and happening in this web space because people here could really take advantage of it. So I'm really excited to speak to React developers. React is a huge part of how people build the web today.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
That's like, this is the space. These are the people. Yeah.
Have you had a feel for the conference yet? Have you heard any of the talks or?
So far, the talks have been pretty broad about like the web. I am looking forward to hearing more of the sessions, but yeah, I'm excited to hear more about it because I just came.
Oh, okay, cool.
I have seen some tweets around, and I was like, oh, it was hard to get in here. There was like a line of 20 minutes just to get your badge.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, especially being connected with Emerge America.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people around there.
Venue.
Yeah, exactly. But I think React Miami's done a good job at giving a little more of a niche.
Yeah, which I love.
Compared to the rest. Yeah.
It seems like a really great group of people. I've talked to a ton of folks already who have so many different experiences.
Yeah.
And not all around React, but all around web development, most around React. Different levels from people who are students to people who are consulting now after years being in this industry and this career space. React itself is only about 10 years old, so.
Yeah, exactly. So have you had any experience with low-code platforms?
I haven't really had a lot of experience with low-code platforms. I feel like an area that we really try to support are designers who are trying to build for the web. So I think that low-code platforms are great for people who don't necessarily have a lot of technical background, but still have a goal to build a product. But also, I think that they're an opportunity. For me, I'm like, oh, there's opportunities to work with low-code platforms to make sure that the output that is being output is optimal and works well on the web platform and takes advantage of new technologies that we're landing in the space.
Working so closely with Google Chrome, I think that you would provide a pretty important perspective to people who are developing low-code platforms, right? Because especially the low-code platforms that focus on front end, there's a lot involved that you want to make sure that you're compatible with the browsers.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
And I think there's a lot of opportunity too. For example, with Bootstrap, that's a hugely used framework for UI, but it still uses Flexbox for grid systems. And there's so much that has changed and evolved in the grid space as just one example of many for making sure that low-code platforms are using the platform to its greatest advantage.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So if you hear low code as a developer, are there anything that you're like wary of, or you're not sure you want to get involved with low code because of them?
My first thought is Dreamweaver.
Yeah, back in the day, I know Dreamweaver.
Yeah, I think for me, just because I'm so involved in like, building things, I don't know if it's a tool that I would necessarily use, but I think it's a tool that many people would benefit from.
Okay. Why wouldn't you use it though? Like
I like to build things from scratch.
You like to build things from scratch?
Yeah, even for the fun of it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. What about like a backend? If you had low code from a backend perspective,
I feel like there's so many client side things that you can do now, like GraphQL is a great way to connect any backends to front ends. There's not a ton of work that I've seen that doesn't have a solution yet. That's not like a
Right.
database service solution. There's
Right.
a ton of services there for any backend needs, or even things like content or CMS services that you want to send to the front end. There's so many
Yeah.
ways to integrate that on the client side, like
Yeah.
using.
No, yeah. So your focus is primarily front end.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
from that
I'm
perspective.
deeply in the front end space.
So is there anything else that you'd like to talk about?
We could talk about some of the new stuff that's landing in browsers. We could talk about building interfaces. I guess I have a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
What do you think is the biggest challenge in the UI space right now?
Separate from me, because I'm colorblind, so the whole idea of
I actually
colors
used
in
to
the
work
UI
with a
space.
lot of colorblind designers. They were some of the best designers I've ever worked with.
It's good to have someone who's colorblind on your team, I think, because it provides a unique accessibility viewpoint when you're developing a front end. In terms of yeah, I think as a developer, there's a bit of like a feeling of saturation, like oversaturation in terms of there's so many different CSS frameworks out there you can use. There's so many different like component frameworks that you can use. Do I want to use React? Do I want to use Angular? It was so great back then, but now it's not so much. But now here it's coming back. So there's so much out there.
There's so much choice.
Yeah, there's so much choice that I find developers tend to get stuck in this thing of like, all right, this is what I'm using. It works, and I'm gonna keep using that because there's just so much other.
It's also hard
options.
to upgrade or to move your entire code base into a new system. That takes a lot of time.
Right? Yeah, no, definitely. But I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges I see. It's just too many things to choose from.
Okay,
which is funny because
valid, honestly.
Yeah, no, but even if it's like the rest of real life, where like you'll go to a restaurant, and if you have a restaurant that has a menu of 300 things, you're just like you're stuck there for 10 minutes, being like, I don't know what to choose.
This is why I think it's important that people pay attention to things that are happening in HTML and UI space, because you don't have to make a choice when you're building for the web platform if you can use the native platform itself. That works across any system. You can use that with Angular, Vue, React, anything.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the things that are landing now let the browser handle focus management, accessibility, key bindings, things that you used to require JavaScript to do. You can now just have HTML handle and the browser handle.
It's true. The APIs, I remember back in the day when we needed to use jQuery for almost everything.
Yeah.
And you always needed libraries, but now the APIs that are coming out, the location API for your GPS stuff, the notification API, there's so much less that you have to do that the browser just provides now.
Yeah.
And then even with all these JavaScript frameworks, web components have come such a long way. You almost don't even need JavaScript anymore, to a certain extent.
I think that the main thing isn't don't use any JavaScript.
Right.
It's use JavaScript for data binding logic, things that make sense for script needs.
Right.
But if it's a presentational style, you shouldn't have to rely on JavaScript to apply the styles.
Particularly not.
So that includes things like anchor positioning. That's an API that we're working on. Hop over, so that whole state management, being able to style drop-down menus, scroll-driven animations. Why do you have to require JavaScript libraries to do scroll-driven design styles based on the scroller instead of timer?
Yeah.
All of those things, view transitions. These are all things that the browser should provide and is working on providing, rather than relying on external third-party libraries that might work in one framework and not the other.
And then you have to wait for them to come out with an update.
A framework-specific version even. So we're just trying to simplify all that and help developers focus on building, which is, I'm sure, what you're also working on with low-code platforms. Letting developers and designers focus on.
And that's, what we try to do at 8base. It pulls, like, low-code is low-code, but our focus is try to be more for developers. So while we extrapolate the stuff that we think a developer doesn't really need to worry about, we still work hard to make sure a developer can code at every level of the application.
That's good. So you're not like hiding it from them. You're giving them an input.
Exactly. Because the biggest problem that I find with low code is you get inhibited in terms of being able to solve your specific business problems. So that's what we try to not stop the developer from doing with 8base.
Yeah. And that's also great for if you're on a smaller team, if you're trying to bootstrap something.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I could definitely see a lot of utility there.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for the chat. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks. If you want to learn more about web platform stuff that's landing, check out developer.chrome.com, where we write about all the news, like new things that are landing across browsers, and web.dev as well. That's for more of the stable stuff.
Perfect. I'm actually, based on this conversation, I'm really excited to see what comes out in the browser.
Yeah, thank you.